Before cooperating with the FBI for more than 6 years, she made millions trading on inside information with Galleon Group's founder, Raj Rajaratnam. She was personally charged with wire fraud and insider trading, and she served 1 year in federal prison in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Rumi Khan.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. Unfortunately, I never thought that I would end up speaking under these circumstances. Just as a background, I was born and raised in India in an average middle-class family where education was extremely important. I came to do a PhD in physics to the United States in 1982. And after a year or so, I decided to go to New York to pursue electrical engineering, from where I got a master's in electrical engineering. And then I moved to Silicon Valley in 1982. And everybody now knows about Silicon Valley, and everybody is trying to emulate it. But this was 1982 before it became so big. And even then, it was a very exciting place. And I think when I look at myself, I had the best opportunities one could get. And, you know, life is all about opportunities and how you make use of them. And I quite didn't do a really good job. And just as part of my education, I have also an MBA from Haas School, University of UC Berkeley. And now I joke about it that my degrees are worth less than the paper on which they are printed, because of what I did, I really can't, you know, use them in a very productive fashion. And you know, I think everybody who has been in some kind of a trouble always has a plan. Either one thinks that, you know, nothing will go wrong. Those of you who may know about, you know, about Wall Street, I'm sure everybody does know about stock trading, etc. We never think that, you know, when you see people getting arrested for insider trading or some corporate fraud, you know, you always think that something like this cannot happen to me. And I recall my boss, Raj Rajaratnam, when Martha Stewart was arrested, he called me and he said, "What an idiot, she actually got caught." And I'm sure, you know, he never thought that he would end up serving prison time where he is now. So Mike Tyson said famously, "Everybody has a plan till we get punched." And boy, did I get punched in my life. How did my you know, career end? It ended in federal prison. I spent a year in jail for everything I did, and now, you know, the opportunities and the choices that I have, you know, with what I can do with my education and my background are very, very limited. And what has it done? You know, this slide kind of summarizes what it did to me. My whole life has been set back in some ways by 30 years. I started my education, you know, Ohio to Columbia, and then, you know, and that is my badge from my prison. When I came out of prison, my probation badge. And then I was on 60 Minutes, where, since this was a very large case, they talked to me about, you know, how the insider trading world worked. So in a lot of ways, as I stand here, this is where I was when I was graduating from school, not knowing where and what choices do I have. How did I get my break on Wall Street? I was given a break by Mr. Raj Rajaratnam, who was a billionaire. You know, he was a billionaire, and right now he's spending 11 years in prison. He's still in jail. You know, he ran one of the largest hedge funds on Wall Street at that time. He had over $5 billion under his management. And like I said, he's currently in prison for 11 years. Now, anytime one makes an investment decision, whether one is buying real estate or a company or a stock or a bond, you know, what do we do? How do we get to that decision? It is always various things that go into that decision making. What we call in the investment world is a mosaic investment decision. You know, you look at the market condition, you know, whether it's real estate or stocks or bond, you look at the market and see how heated it is. Are you comfortable going in an overheated world, or it is underheated right now, or nobody wants it? So you look at the market condition. One looks at the market sector. For example, those of you who are very near to the oil markets, you know, when the oil was near over $100, everybody wanted to learn everything about companies which are drilling for oil, at least in the US. And then when the oil market tanked, suddenly it became an uninvestable sector. Same thing with, for example, right now, the real estate market. You know, it's a tough market to invest. So you look at the investment sector. Then you look at the macro environment. That plays into the role. You know, what's happening with the interest rates? Are the interest rates going up or down? Because you're doing, you know, discounting on the investment, on the interest rate. And then usually there's an in-house analyst who feeds into this whole thing. And then in the red bubble, I have what is called inside information. And I think the point I'm trying to highlight is that a portfolio manager is not sitting and just, you know, chasing inside information. No, it is one of the inputs that is used to make that decision. But that is what is the most criminal input that goes into it, which can really destroy a fund as it exists. At least, you know, at least that's the way it has gone down when the government comes to you. Now, what is inside information? I'm sure, you know, it sounds kind of simple in something that comes from an executive. But the executives are allowed to give that information. However, they are allowed to give it in public forums. It cannot be a secret exchange. You know, the government came out with regulation fair disclosure, where they say that small investors should have the same access as the big investors. So any information that is secretly given to an investor, which is not given in a public forum, then that is considered as inside information, which is a criminal offense. Information past the quiet period. As we know that all companies that report their result every 3 months, once the quarter is closed, they are not supposed to talk about their quarter till on the conference call. So information that is leaked to you, to somebody, after the quarter is closed is inside information. And like I said, secret exchange between an insider and an outside executive. Now, what was my typical day when I worked in the business? I lived in Silicon Valley, and you know, because the market opens at 6:30 because of the time difference, I used to start my day at 5 in the morning. I'd be listening to, you know, Wall Street calls for the day, broker calls, do the research on the stocks, news on the stocks in the portfolio, and then I would get ready to go to any company meetings I have to go to, or I would be going to investment tours, bus tours, because I focus on the tech companies and a lot of companies were right there. I would occasionally have meetings with the company management, etc. So I spent a lot of time doing fundamental research. I was a fundamental research analyst on technology companies, and that's really what I did. Did research, listened to the conference calls, maintained earning models, and I had a lot of stress because I was as good as my last trade. Every trade, you know, when my boss is hammering me that, you know, you made an investment recommendation, the stock's down, you know, 5% since we bought it, what are we going to do? So it's a very, very high stress environment, at least when I worked in it. Now, inside information, you know, where could I go to get it? I already said how I did my normal research. Where can one get an inside information? So if one thinks about a corporate deal, whether a company is trying to raise money, you're trying to buy a company, or you're trying to do an equity offering, anything, so many people come together. So a corporate executive is always there. Investor relations is always there to tell corporate executives what they can say and what they cannot say. Then you have the accounting and auditing firms, which have to okay the financial data which is being presented. You have management consulting there sometimes, who actually tells these companies what to do. Investment banking is always there in the middle to get their cut. And then you have the rating agencies who are rating the paper which is being floated. Now, I, as a single person working in Silicon Valley, as a consultant most of my career, I had developed relationships in various arenas. So I had a connection at Polycom, where I knew a top executive who would leak to me company upcoming results and the guidance before it was public information. I had a connection at a rating agency, Moody's, where the gentleman would give me information on upcoming buyouts. So for example, when Hilton was trying to go private, I got that information 3 days before the news actually happened, and I made myself about $800,000. My boss made, over $30 million. I think Raj Rajaratnam made a ton of money. Another place where I had connection was investor relations. I had a friend who worked in a company called Market Street Partners, and her account was Google. So before Google's earnings came out, she would give me the upcoming quarter results. And that particular quarter, the company was actually running short. They were going to miss the quarter. And I made $800,000 through that trade. I had shorted the stock. My boss made multiple of millions, same thing again. So the point I'm making is that, anytime a company is involved in a deal, multiple entities are coming together, and I develop sources. As many people do who work in the financial world, they try to look for where they can get they call it the edge. At least that's the way it was called when I worked in the business. And in the end, when the FBI comes knocking, there are no good options. At least that's how I felt. I have that picture, which is very scary. That's what the stress did to me. It was like living in a pressure cooker. There are no good options. One has to choose one's poison. Whether you want to go. Whether I wanted, the choice I was facing was, you can spend over 10 years in prison, or you can cooperate. And I chose my poison. Like I said, I lived in a pressure cooker. And when I look back, I'm aghast at the kind of choices I made. So, that's my house where I lived before I went to prison. So I went from living in a 15,000 square foot home right next to Stanford University to going to, that's the prison camp that I went to. And I broke the law twice, not once. In 1995 to 1998, I worked in Intel marketing. And when I was looking for a job, Raj had come to me, and when we became friends, he started asking me for Intel's quarter numbers. And I was trying to get a job on Wall Street. I was happy to offer that information to him, and ultimately I was employed by Raj. I worked for him for a year and a half, and those days, some of you might remember, Wall Street was going up every day. All we had to do was get up in the morning and count our money. I had become a very, at one point I was worth over $100 million. So I had become extremely wealthy, very successful, and I left Galleon. And 6 months afterwards, FBI came to me, and they wanted my cooperation against him. They had pictures of me sending Intel information to Raj. And I cooperated. However, nothing happened at that time. The government closed the case because maybe the 9/11 happened, I'm not sure why, but they did not pursue Raj. I pled guilty. I paid a big fine. I think maybe $250,000 is the fine I paid. But, the case got sealed. The case was sealed. There was no media exposure. And I pretended it didn't even happen. I paid the fine and I kind of moved on. And then I'm still working with the hedge fund world. And in 2007, FBI came to me again. And now I've been working with the hedge funds, and now I'm seeking information. I'm not giving it, I'm seeking information. So I cooperated this time with the government, 2007 to 2013. And, as we said in the introduction, it was one of the largest insider trading case that the government cracked. And I was an informant with FBI for all that time. And, many people have asked me, why did I do it? I had a brush with the law. Why would I do it again? I come across as most people who talk to me think that I come across as a very sane and a smart woman. But in the end, I think what gets most people is the hubris. When you're worth the kind of money I was, you feel that you are invincible. You're bigger than, my husband had to call through my assistant to get through to me. That's how busy I was, and that's how great I thought I was. It's a joke that the market can make you feel that you're better than what truly you are. Stock market is a very, very kind of a strange world. It can make you a lot of money, and then you can feel that you are bigger than whatever. So in the end, it's hubris. And then I had access to very, very powerful people. Raj was one of the largest hedge fund managers on Wall Street, and I had a direct access to him. It's almost like, for example, I don't know, he was the epitome of success at Wall Street, and I had a direct access to him. You feel very powerful. You feel very important. That people like that take my phone call. They want to talk to me. I'm in the network. And, I was the paragon of success. My whole family was very proud of me. You drink your own Kool-Aid. Anybody who is super successful can relate to that you feel that you are the thing. And the first case was sealed, nothing happened, no press, no media coverage, and you kind of, I never felt even a brush. And in the end, I also think at least the financial markets can be a proponent of a behavior of an addict. If you're a cocaine addict or some drug addict, and you go through a rehab, which is not so pervasive maybe in this part of the world, but at least we're in the US, when you are a drug addict and you may go through a rehab, but if you come back and you're with the same set of friends, guess what? Very soon you're back at the same behavior. And that's me. That's what happened to me. And upside to the breaking the law, really, and I don't have to repeat it. Every criminal would say that. Maybe not every instance can make you millions of dollars. But, when you are making a couple of $1 million a trade, think about it. I grew up in a very average family. All of a sudden, I live in this big home. I have 5 cars. People want to talk to me. Everybody wants to, you start feeling, you just feel that you are, you are beyond what, it's hard for me to even articulate the feeling I went through. And of course, there's job security. In my business, if you don't have information, you're out of the network and people don't want to talk to you. So information is the king in our business. And without information, like I said, you're out of the network. I recall that very vividly, that one of my contacts once said to me, hey, I've given you so many good trades lately. You haven't given me anything. If you have nothing, I'm going to stop talking to you. It's as blatant as that. So, in that world that I was in, this was my access. I did not make the rules of engagement. These were the rules of engagement that I was trained with. And also, I think insider trading, I felt I was doing my job. I was very good at what I did. My job was to get information to make my decisions, and I was a zealot investor. I was very good at it. And of course, there's the group encouragement. You know, in a group where everybody is engaged in a certain behavior, they are encouraging each other to do that. So the group thing can really push you into the wrong direction. And it did not happen to me overnight. You know, it happened slowly, but in the end, you're kind of going down the slippery path. You know, when I went back to the business after my first case, I pledged, I'm never going to trade with this information again. Well, I'm only going to have relationships, and I'm only going to barter the information. Well, very soon, I started trading. And then the next step, I start paying for the information. And guess what? Now I have a felony record. The investigation, you know, we already said it was one of the largest investigations. Over 90 people were arrested or prosecuted. The government actually collected over $2 billion in fines, and it lasted over 5 years. You know, as an informant, life is extremely, extremely difficult. You know, even now, in the beginning, for the longest time, I refused to Google myself. I didn't want to look at how I looked like. I didn't want to see my pictures. I never were, and even now, I do Google myself because every time I put out a story, I write for Forbes, so I want to see what's there. But it is extremely difficult because the government is very, very tough. You know, when I was an informant with them, the first call that I recorded, the 2 FBI agents were with me on that call. And you know, they record because, you know, in the beginning there's a trust building too. Every time I went to New York, the FBI agents used to pick me up from the hotel, and they used to whisk me to the Southern District office because they were going after Raj, who was a very important man, and they didn't want anybody to see me around that courthouse area. And I was made to wear, you know, headscarves, big sunglasses. In fact, one of the pictures I have, I think it may be coming up, where I have these big glasses. I forgot my sunglasses one day, and the FBI gave me the pair of sunglasses. They said, you can't step out because we have to hide your face. So, you know, I went through that. It's very, very difficult, but, you know, it was a way to survive. And the government, you know, the government is very, very, very tough. I don't know if any of you has seen the 60 Minutes piece, but in that, one of the prosecutors said that he had told me many times that if you are not truthful to us, I'm going to make it my goal to make sure you spend over 20 years in prison. So they use all sorts of tactics when they are after you. They use big press releases, scare tactics, tough penalties, and of course, you know, they try to get informants such as myself to crack the cases. And you know, this is truly what the prison cell where I went to looked like. I found you share that little area with 3 people. There are 3 people in that, up and down, and there's a small bed on the other side and a locker. So I went from living in a 15,000 square foot home to this. And you know, the price that more than even me, the price my family paid. I have a young daughter. At that time, she was in middle school. And you know, my husband was very mad at me. He didn't want anything to do with me. So my daughter wrote a letter to the judge when I was going for my sentencing. And now think about it. She's in middle school, 8th grade. And she writes a letter on her own with no inputs from anybody. And all of a sudden, she realizes that her mom may be gone. She's facing some, you know, she starts Googling me and, oh my God. So she shares that with her friends. And now her friends abandon her. She's a pariah in her own school now. And her school counselor called us that you have to deal with your daughter now because she's having social problems. You know, my husband didn't speak to me for at least most of the time that I was in the prison. The first 3-4 months, he didn't want anything to do with me. So it was just, you know, he faced in his own work in every way. You know, I grew up in India. Everybody involved in the case was from India. My picture now is showing up in Indian newspapers, and my parents all of a sudden now have to explain to their relatives what's going on with their daughter. So the price that, you know, one can never be prepared to go to prison. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would end up in prison. I spent my whole life studying and trying to make a career. That is what I wanted, but unfortunately, this is where I ended up. And you know, what are my biggest lessons? One can never underestimate the power of culture. You know, that I think is the biggest thing. You know, as His Excellency pointed out in his own presentation, that, you know, what is the tone at the top? What kind of, when you have ambiguous tone in a company, then it is basically pushing people to make bad choices. The culture where I worked, everybody was engaged and encouraging the bad behavior. That is what was my downfall. Not seeing or touching a victim does not mean it's a victimless crime. You know, in my case, for example, I'm almost done. We don't see the victim, doesn't make it a victimless crime. And disagreement with the law is no excuse to break the law. And groupthink, you know, when a set of people are thinking the same way, they are pushing each other for bad behavior, you're going down the rabbit hole then. And, you know, and power of being in the in crowd. I had access to some of the most powerful people on Wall Street. And that can push one's judgment, you know, that can really cloud one's judgment. And, you know, I think many of us, when we join companies, we sign confidentiality agreements, but we never read what it means. The confidentiality agreements that we sign means that the information given to us at the company is for corporate decision. It is not to make profitable trades for ourselves or for other people. And, you know, and what do I do now? I'm a public speaker. I talk about ethics and compliance. I work with corporate training, hedge funds, financial institutions, on really presenting a live case of how choices can lead to, you know, really disastrous outcomes. And in general, I still think my life totally sucks. You know, it's hard to move on. Felony is a gift which keeps on giving. You know, it never kind of leaves you. I'm a contributor to Forbes. I write for Forbes. And, you know, I write on corporate malfeasance. But, you know, most of it, like I said, I do corporate training on ethics and try to help people not make similar choices. And that's the end of my prepared remarks. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Khan, and thank you all who have taken time out of your busy schedules this week to grow your network and to learn about the latest, most innovative ways to prevent and detect fraud. I know it's Innovation Month here in the UAE, and I look forward to sharing this time with each of you to learn, grow, and reinforce the global fight against fraud.